So we are holding on Daf Nun Dalid Amud Aleph. We're going to try to do Nun Dalid Amud Bet today. It's a bit of a long Amud, so we're holding by where it says Echad HaMe'areh, right by the wide lines. So the Mishnah said that whether a person does Gmar Biyah, they do a complete Biyah, whether they're Ma'areh, which is Ha'ara, which is just like a partial Biyah, which we're going to learn about exactly what it is in later on in a daf or two. So we said if a person just does ha'ara, which is a partial biyah, he's also koneh the yevama, and also by arayot, it's asur. So amar ula minayin leha'ara min Torah. Where do we find the concept? How do we know from the Torah that ha'ara is considered biyah, at least with regard to these things? So, Shnei Emar, it says in the pasuk by Nida. This pasuk is talking about Nida. It says, "Ve'ish asher yishkav et isha dava, ve'gila et ervata." If a person is together with a Nida, et mikora he'era. So the pasuk uses the word he'era. So we see from there a concept of ha'ara that even partial biyah is considered biyah with regard to a Nida and would be karet. So mikan leha'ara min Torah. So the Gemara says, great. Ashkechan nida. So we see by nida that if someone just does ha'ara to a nida, just a partial biyah to a nida, then, that's considered like a biyah. But what about sha'ar arayot minayin? How do we know the rest of the arayot? V'chite man nelif min nida. Maybe you'll tell me, okay, so just like by nida, partial biyah is considered biyah, so also by other arayot, the same thing, ha'ara is considered biyah. So you can't, the Gemara says not so fast, because Nida might be a little bit strict. Nida has a chumrah, and once Nida has some type of chumrah over the other arayot, you can't learn this. So, Male Nida sheken mitamad boala. A Nida is mitameh, the one who is with her. Just like a Nida is time'ah, so the person who's with her also is tameh. So Nida is, if somebody is with another one of the arayot, he doesn't become tameh. If someone is with a nida, it becomes tameh. Therefore, that makes nida a little bit more strict, and therefore maybe only by nida we have this stringency that ha'ara is considered like biyah. But by other arayot, maybe not. So how do we know by other arayot that ha'ara is also like biyah, like a gemar biyah? So ella atya me'eshet ach. So the Gemara says, okay, so we learn from eshet ach, from a person's brother's wife. Dichtiv, it says in the pasuk, "Ve'ish asher yikach et eshet achiv nidahi." The pasuk says that if somebody is together with his brother's wife, nidahi. The pasuk uses that word. It's a nida. So what does that mean? V'chi eshet achiv leolam nidahi. What eshet ach is always a nida. She's just like every other woman. Sometimes she's going to be seeing dam nida, sometimes not. So why are we saying that a brother's wife is nidahi? So ella kenida. Rather, it means to tell us that she's like a nida. In what way? Ma nida beha'ara, af eshet ach beha'ara. Just like by nida, it's ha'ara is like gmar biyah. Just a partial biyah is already violates the isur karet, violates the erva. So too, by eshet ach. So the Gemara says, okay, but you still can't learn from there to all the other arayot. Why? Male eshet ach sheken beyado lerabot. Eshet ach is the brother has the ability to marry as many wives as he wants, and he can make more women asur on his brother. Meaning, you have two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. So Reuven marries Rachel. Now Rachel is asur on Shimon. Reuven could marry Leah. Now she's asur on Shimon. He could marry Sarah. Now she's asur. So since he has the ability to make more ladies asurot on his brother, that's kind of like a chumrah in Eshet Ach that you don't find by many other arayot. If a person's sister is asura, no one has the ability to make other ladies that are mutarot now asurot as being his sister. Meaning, it's eshet ach, his brother's wife. His brother has the ability to make more ladies asurot on him. Whereas by some of the other arayot, that doesn't apply. So you can't learn from eshet ach just because by eshet ach ha'ara is like Gemar Bia doesn't necessarily mean you can learn that to other arayot, because Eshet Ach has this stringency. Di'bai mekadesh vazil ki alpha, because if he wants, he could be mekadesh 1,000 ladies and make them all asurot. So Ella, so we tried to learn from Nida. We said Nida is strict. It's mitameh, the lady that she's with, the man that she's with. We try to learn from Eshet Ach. That's strict. He could be oser. The brother could be oser. More brothers, more ladies. So Ella atya ma'achot av va'achot em. So the Gemara says, you know how we're gonna learn by all the other arayot that just ha'ara is considered Gemar Bia, is the same as Gemar Bia, and is also gonna be asur. We'll learn from achot av va'achot em, from his aunt, right? His father's sister or mother's sister, which are both asurot. Dichtiv, it says in the pasuk, ve'ervat achot imecha va'achot avicha lo tigale, ki et she'ero he'era. It says he can't be with his mother's sister or his father's sister, and it uses the word he'ara. It says ki et she'ero he'era. So we see that ha'ara is also going to be asur by achot av v'achot em, by his father's and mother's sister. So ika lemifrach. So we want to learn from there to all other arayot. So the Gemara says, no, ika lemifrach mal achot av v'achot em sheken isur haba me'elav. That's different because that's an isur that comes on its own. It's an isur that a person is like born into. Meaning it's not, you don't need any marriage to take place or any action to happen to make that lady asura. It's his father's sister. He was born into it. Or even if she was born afterwards, it doesn't matter. It's not something that you need a marriage to take place to make asur. It's more of like we'll call it a natural erva. So maybe you can't learn from here to other arayot that are through marriage. So the Gemara says, okay, so we have three cases. We have Nida, that it says Ha'ara is like Gemar Bia. We have brother's wife. And we have mother, sister, and father's sister. But we can't learn from either one of them to all of other arayot. So the Gemara says, okay, Mechada lo atia, tete chada metarti. Why don't we learn out from two of them? We can't learn out from one. So let's try putting two together and learning out from two. So mahai tete, from which ones are you going to learn? Tete me'eshet ach v'achot av v'achot em. Why don't we put together brother's wife, that ha'ara is like Gemar Bia by a brother's wife, and also father and mother's sister, that ha'ara is like Gemar Bia by a father, sister, and mother, sister. So the Gemara says, no, you can't learn everything from there. Why? Ma lahanach sheken isuran mishum she'er. Those are all isurim that are because, the isur is because they're a relative. The brother's wife is asur because she's a relative. The mother's sister and father's sister is asur because she's a relative. So what can you not learn from there? Which erva can you not learn from there? Eshet ish. Right? Rashi points out that's really what we're trying to learn. How do we know by Eshet ish ha'ara is like Gemar Bia? All the other arayot we could learn from some variation, but Eshet ish, how are we going to learn that by Eshet ish ha'ara is like Gemar Bia? So ela teitim minida v'achota v'achote. So the Gemara suggests, okay, fine. Let's learn from Nida and achot av and achotem. Nida and father, sister, and mother, sister. Right? Just like by those cases, ha'ara is like Gemar Bia, so too by all other arayot, ha'ara should be like Gemar Bia. So the Gemara says, no, malahanach sheken isur bahaba me'elav. Those are different because they're isurim that come on their own. They're not isurim that require any marriage or kiddushin to take place to make her asura, unlike Eshet ish. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. Last option. We tried everything together. What's the last option? Teitim minida ve'eshet ach. Put together Nida and Eshet. We tried all of them individually. We're trying every variation now. So if by Nida and Eshet ach, ha'ara is like Gemar Bia, so too by everything else it should be, ha'ara should be like Gemar Bia. Demai parchit. What are you going to ask this time? How are you going to break up this limud, this mematzinu this time? So the Gemara says there is a way to break it up. Matkif larav acha berei derav ika. Ma lenida ve'eshet ach sheken en lahem heter b'chaye osran. Nida and Eshet ach, you can't learn just like by Nida and by Eshet ach, ha'ara is like Gemar Bia, so too by all the arayot. Why can't we say that? Because Nida and Eshet ach share a common denominator that she'en lahem heter b'chayei osran, that they don't have any heter while their oser is still around. Now the Gemara is going to tweak this a drop, but what we're saying is by nida, what makes a nida asura? The blood. When the blood, as long as the blood is around, there's no heter for nida. By eshet ach, what makes her asura? The fact that she's married to the brother. As long as the brother is around, even if he divorces her, but as long as he's alive, there's no heter. The only heter is if the brother dies without children. So those arayot share a common denominator, that as long as the reason that she is asura is around, she can no longer she doesn't have any heter. So by eshet ish, that's not true. By eshet ish, the guy who made her asur could still be around. He could give her a get, and he's still alive. He's still in the world. He's still around, and she's muteret now. So those arayot, nida and eshet ach, are more strict because as long as the reason that originally made them asur is still around, there's no heter for them. Whereas by eshet ish, the reason that made her asur could still be around. That guy could still be around, and there is a heter through a get. So tomar be'eshet ish sheken yesh la heter b'chayei osra. By eshet ish, you don't have that. There's a heter when the oser, the man who originally was mekadesh her, is still around. So the Gemara is just going to tweak. We're going to go with this, that we don't have any limud from nida and eshet ach. The Gemara is just going to tweak the response that we gave. So Amar le Rav Acha midifti le Ravina atu nida ve'eshet ach b'chayei osran hu de'en lahem heter aval la'achar mikan yesh lahem heter. He says the way you expressed it, it sounds like, nida and eshet ach, while the reason that made them asur is still around, then there's no heter for them. But if it's gone, there is a heter. That's what you made it sound like, and that's not true. That even after the reason that made a nida and an eshet ach is gone, still there could be no heter. Meaning, he's just not happy with the way it was expressed, so he's going to tweak it a drop. So nida beyomet al yamilta. Nida, it's not, even if there's no blood, even if the oser, the blood is gone, the dam nida is gone, but still she has to wait a certain amount of days. So it's the days that are the matir, not the lack of blood. And eshet ach bebanim talia rachamana. And eshet ach, the heter of yibum, is not just when the brother passes away, it's the fact that the brother passed away without children. The Torah makes it dependent on him having children or not. So the heter is not just that the oser is gone, the heter is something else. So ela parechachi, rather the way you should have expressed the pircha, the reason that we can't learn from nida and eshet ach is as follows. Mala nida ve'eshet ach sheken en osran matiran. Nida and eshet ach, the oser doesn't matir them. Meaning, the blood, which is oser the nida, isn't matir the nida. It's the days that she has to count that's matir her. The brother who is mekadesh a lady, isn't oser her on his brother. He can't be matir her on his brother. The fact that he'll pass away without children is what's matir her. So by nida and eshet ach, the oser cannot be matir. By eshet ish, that's a little bit lighter because the oser can be matir. The one who gave her the kiddushin can give her a get and be matir her. So tomar be'eshet ish she'osra matira. So rather we can't learn out from any variation. We couldn't learn out from nida because she's matame the boel. We couldn't learn out from eshet ach because the brother could make more isurim. We couldn't learn out from achot av v'achot em, the sister of the mother and the sister of the father, that ha'ara is like gemar bia, because why not? Why couldn't we learn out from achot av v'achot em? Because that's a natural isur, right? That's something that comes on its own. So we tried learning from them together, we couldn't. So we're stuck. How do we learn? We're back to square one. How do we learn ha'ara is like gemar bia? So Ella Amar Rabbi Yonah ve'itema Rav Huna b'rei de Rav Yoshua. So Rabbi Yonah says, or some say it was in the name of Rav Huna b'rei de Rav Yoshua. This goes down as a statement of Rabbi Yonah. It's called Hekesha de Rabbi Yonah. Amar Kra, the pasuk says, כי כל אשר יעשה מכל התועבות האלה ונכרתו הנפשות העושות. It says, anyone who does any one of these arayot, they all get karet. So, what do you see from here? Boker Tov. It says, ונכרתו הנפשות העושות, that all hukshu kol arayot kulan lenida. All the arayot are connected to nida. That ma nida beha'ara, meaning all the arayot are connected to each other. In this case, we're learning out everything from nida. Ma nida beha'ara, just like by nida, it says et mikora he'era, and we learn out ha'ara, even a partial bia is considered bia for a nida. So afkol beha'ara, so too every other type of erva, everything in the parsha of arayot is also ha'ara is also considered a bia and will be in isur karet. So now the question is, okay, if that's the case, so we had 3 psukim where we had 3 cases. We had nida, we had eshet ach, and achot av, and achot em, right? So the question is going to be like this: but we learn everything out from nida, so why do we need it to say nida by eshet ach? Right? We said before, it says nida by eshet ach to tell me that the brother's wife is like nida, just like nida ha'ara is a gemar bia. By eshet ach ha'ara is also a gemar bia. Now we don't need that anymore. So the Gemara says vela nida diktiva gabe eshet ach lamali. The fact that it says nida by eshet ach lamali, what do I learn from there? So likid Rav Huna, Damar Rav Huna, Remet. So we learn it from we use it to teach me like what Rav Huna says. Damar Rav Huna, Remez leivama mina Torah minayin. He says, where is there a hint to Yevamot mina Torah? So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? Minayin haktiv Yevamot yavo aleh. It says it's a pasuk in the Torah. It says there's a, the Yavam takes the Yevamah and he's with her. So ella remez livama she'asura b'chayei ba'ala minayin. So he's bothered like this, meaning we have to put things into perspective. We have a pasuk. The pasuk says that a brother's wife is asura. We also have another pasuk. The pasuk says that you do yibum if the person dies without children. So the question is like this: how do we know? Maybe when the Torah says the brother's wife is asura, that means when the brother marries someone and they have children, okay, his wife is asura. But and even if he divorces his wife, she's asura. She remains asura. But maybe when there are no children and he divorces his wife, she's muteret.
Why?
Why shouldn't she be? We know that there's a heter of yibum. Well, that's kind of what the Gemara is gonna play out why we would think that. But there's a heter of yibum where nun dalet amud bet, few lines where the first word on the line is b'chaye ba'ala minayin. So el remez leivamash asur b'chaye ba'ala minayin. So the Gemara says, Hai Savarahi, it's a Savara. That a Yevama will be a sister-in-law, a brother's wife is going to be, even without children, is going to be Asura if she got divorced. It's a Svara. What's a Svara? Medama Rachman al-Achar mitad ba'ala sharia, michlad v'chaye ba'ala Asura. Just, the Torah says that if the guy dies without children, then she's muteret. But if he's still alive, then she should remain Asura. So the Gemara says, not necessarily. Don't tell me that's the reason you know that she's asura if she gets divorced. Maybe the Torah is telling me that if the brother dies without children, then it's a mitzvah to take over and to marry and to do yibum. But if he just divorces his wife, maybe it's reshut. There's no, meaning there's going to be 3 levels of brother's wife. There's going to be brother's wife when he passes away with no children, that's mitzvah. There's going to be brother's wife when he divorces her with no children, that could be reshut. And then there's going to be brother's wife with children, that's always going to be asura. That's going to be karet. Maybe the Gemara is suggesting, how do we know that that's not the case? So the Gemara says, maybe it's just reshut if the husband is alive and he divorced her. Or maybe the Torah is telling us yibum is a mitzvah raseh when the brother is niftar, when the brother passes away. But if the brother is still alive and he divorced her, then you can't take his wife, but it's a naseh. It's not a lav. How do we know that there's an isur lav? So Amar Kra, V'ish asher yikach et eshet achiv. The Torah says you cannot be a person who takes his brother's wife. Nidahi. It says the words nidahi. So what do we learn from the words nidahi? Right, meaning brother's wife could be brother's wife with children. What do we learn from the words nidahi? She's a nida. She's like nida. V'chi eshet achiv nidahi. What? She's a nida? She's not a nida. She could be. She could not be. Ella kenida. She's like a nida. How so? Ma nida. Afa pi sheyesh la heter la'achar mikan. B'shat isura bekaret. Nida, she's going to become muteret later. But right now, she's karet. So, af eshet ach nami, af al pi sheyesh la heter la'achar mikan b'chai ba'ala bekaret. So, eshet ach also, same thing. Even though she'll be muteret later, meaning she has no children, and her husband is, her husband could be niftar, and she could be muteret later, still, she's going to be asura karet now, if her husband did not pass away. So that's how you see eshet ach bechaye ba'ala still is asura mishum eshet ach. Meaning, no, what?
If the husband is alive, so eshet ach is asur.
No, but how do you know that that eshet? Maybe when the Torah says eshet ach, that's only talking about when there's children. When there's no children, maybe. What? Let's say he divorces her. How do you know that you can't marry her? So it's telling us that she has a shem eshet ach, an erva of eshet ach, even with no children. That's the limud that we're learning.
Oh, you see the husband will be still alive?
Yes, that's what we're learning. So Ella, so the Gemara says, okay, fine. Ella ha'ara dichtiva gabe achot av va'achot em lamali. So fine. So if we're learning now again, we learned out ha'ara, just a partial bia, is considered a gemar bia, and it's asur by all the arayot we learned from Nida. So then why do we need the Torah to tell me ha'ara by mother, sister, and by father, sister? What's the purpose of that? If I learn everything out from Nida, what's the purpose of writing it by mother, sister, and father, sister? So l'kedeba emine Ravina merava. So the Gemara says, you know why? Because we have this story. One time Ravina asked Rava the following question. He said, "Ha'ma'areh b'zachor mahu." Let's say someone just does ha'ara by a zachar. He's mishkav zachar. With a male, he does ha'ara. So what's the halacha? Is that like a gemar bia or not? Again, ha'ara is, we're going to learn later exactly what it is. Bachloket, how much of the thing has to go in, but it's a partial bia. So ha'ara b'zachor mahu. So if he just did ma'areh, he did ha'ara to a male, what's the halacha? So b'zachor mishkevei isha ktiva. He answered him. Rava answered Ravina. He said, "What are you talking about? The pasuk says mishkevei isha." So we learned that the same way that by an isha ha'ara is like a gemar bia, so too by a zachar ha'ara is like a gemar bia. So ella ha'ma'areh bebehema mahu. So he said, no. My question is, what if someone does ha'ara to a behema? He takes an animal and he just does partial bia, just ha'ara. Is that gonna be considered shochev im behema, and he gets the mitat beitin for that, or no? So Amar le, so he said to him, Imeno inyan leha'ara tichtiva gabe achot ava achot em da'atya behekesham de Rabbi Yona. If I don't need the fact that it teaches me that just a partial bia is considered like a full bia by arayot, by mother, sister, and father, sister, so what's it written there for? So Tineu inyan leha'ara de behema. So I could learn, if I can't, there's a rule right in Shas. Imeno inyan, Tineu inyan. That if I have a piece of information that I don't need for the pasuk that it's in, I could learn it to something similar. So I don't need it to teach me that a partial bia is considered a full bia by mother, sister, and father, sister, because I already learned from Nida to all arayot that a partial bia is considered a complete bia. So what do I need it to teach me? I'll use it to teach me that by a behema, if someone just does partial bia to a behema, is chayav mita. Is skila, I think it is. So Tineu inyan lehara de behema. So the Gemara says, okay, michti. Behema chayve mitot bedinu. Being with a behema, right? And there's a parsha of arayot. It's important it's actually this week's parsha to be a little bit familiar with. There's a parsha of arayot that the Torah lists all the arayot. Okay, and then there's like a few psukim of a break that talk about other things, and then it lists two more. It says mishkav zachar and behema. So mishkav zachar and behema they're still considered part of the arayot, but they're not fully connected to the rest of the arayot. Now, all those arayot, some of them have mitat beitin, some of them are skila, some of them are srefa, some of them are chenek, some of them are just karet. There's no mitat beitin. So if we're learning that ha'ara is like a gemar bia, that just a partial bia is like a complete bia, by a behema, we're learning it because the Torah wrote it by a different one of the arayot, so it would make sense that it should write it by one of the arayot that has it's like the same caliber as behema, that's mitat beitin. Why did it write it by mother, sister, and father, sister? That's not mitat beitin, that's just karet. That's the question of the Gemara. So it says, michti, behema chayve mitot beidini. My ta'ama ktiv lehara dide gabe chayve kritut. If a behema is part of the level that's chayav mitat beitin, why are we learning it's ha'ara, that ha'ara is like a gemar bia, from something that's just chayav karet, from achot av and achot em? Lichtov gabe mitat beitin, v'nelef mitat beitin, mi mitat beitin. Why didn't we write it by something else as mitat beitin, and we could learn? It'll be an easier way to learn. So the Gemara says, you know why? Aidi de kule kra lidrashati. That whole pasuk of mother, sister, and father, sister is completely extra. The Torah wrote it already and is rewriting it to teach me just drashot. So once this pasuk is just for the purposes of drashot, so we included it in that pasuk. But you're right. In an ideally, yeah, you would have thought that it would make more sense to write it by something which is mitat beitin. But this pasuk is already completely extra. Therefore, the Torah prefers to include it in the drasha over here. So my drasha. So I'll let you know. The rest of the amud, I don't know how far we're gonna go, but the rest of the amud and the next amud also is it's gonna be all drashot and learning things from things. Let's try to get to the bottom of the amud in a few minutes. It's could be rather quick. So my drasha, Detanya, Ervat achot avicha lo tigale, ben minav ben minaim. The pasuk says that you cannot be with your father's sister. So now the question is, your father's sister, how is it your father's sister? Do they share just a mother or just a father? Meaning, it could be your father's sister who he only shares a mother with, or your father's sister who he only shares a father with. So we're saying ben minav ben minaim, could be both. The Gemara says, how do you know that? Ata omer ben minav ben minaim o eno ela minav. Maybe it's only through the father, because generally we go through the father. Velo minaim, and it's not including the father's sister who he shares only a mother with. Now we have two things to compare it to. So the Gemara is gonna go through it. Vidinu, chayav kan v'chayav ba'achoto. So he cannot be with his father's sister. He also cannot be with his own sister. So ma'achoto ben minav ben minaim, just like his own sister. It doesn't matter if he shares a mother or a father. So af kan ben minav ben minaim. So too by his father's sister or mother's sister, it's just like his own sister. It should be whether he shares a mother or a father. Or the Gemara says, I could tell you the other way around. Klach lederech zu. We could go the other way. Chayav kan v'chayav bedodato. He's chayav for his father's sister, and he's chayav for his father's brother's wife. Right? So father's sister, we could compare it to his own sister, or we can compare it to his father's brother's wife. It's similar to each one. The Gemara is going to go through everything.
His brother's wife?
Yes. His father's sister...
His uncle's wife?
His uncle's wife, correct. So his uncle's wife, what type of uncle's wife is asur? It's an uncle only if his father shares a father with that brother. Right? I should have brought out the projector for this. Right? You have Reuven. His father's brother's wife is asura, but it's only his father's brother who they share father. If it's father's half brother through a mother's wife, she's not asura. So the Gemara says ma dodato minaav velo minaim, just like his dodato, his uncle's wife. That's talking about his uncle who his father shares a father with that brother. That's minaav and not minaim, right? If the father shares a mother only with that uncle, with that brother, then that's not going to be asura. So afkan minaav velo minaim. So also over here by father sister, maybe it's only minaav velo minaim. So near lemidome. So basically, what the Gemara is saying is like this: we have a suffix, his mother's sister and father's sister. Let's just take the example, father's sister. Is it his father's sister through a father only, or also through a mother? That's the question. That's the question that we're trying to deal with. Is it his father's sister through a father only, or through a mother as well? So we have two things that it could be similar to. It could be similar to his own sister. His own sister is asura whether he shares a mother or a father. So to his father's sister should be asura whether his father shares a mother or a father with that sister. Or do we say that no, it's similar to uncle's wife, and uncle's wife is only if your father shares a brother with that uncle, but not if he shares a mother. So too, father's sister is only if he shares a father, not a mother. So the Gemara says, Nir limidome. Maybe we should compare his sister to his father's sister to his sister, because they're both natural isurim. No marriage needs to take place to create that isur. Or I could tell you the other way around. Or we should go generational. His own sister is his generation, but we compare his father's sister to his father's brother's wife because they're his father's generation. So Talmud Lomar. So we have a safek. Basically, the question is, how do we know that the erva of achot av and achot em is whether the father shares a mother or a father? So Talmud Lomar, ervat achot avicha lo tigale. It says it an additional time to teach me ben minav ben minaim. And ervat achot imecha lo tigale ben minav ben minaim. So the Gemara says, okay, lama lemechtava ba'achot av achot em. Why do I need it to tell me both by mother's sister and by father's sister that they're, even if they only share a mother? So how come I need it by both? I need it by both by mothers, by the, if it would have only written it by the father, so I would have thought it by the father. We're more strict because the yichus goes through the father, so we're more strict by the father, and therefore that's why we asur both his sisters through the mother and through the father. But by a mother, I would have thought no. And a mother is more strict because she's vadait. A mother in halacha is always vaday your mother. A father, not necessarily is he vaday the person's father. So therefore, I would have thought that a mother would be more strict. I would have thought by a father maybe it would be less strict, and we wouldn't include the father's siblings from his mother's side as well, his sister from his mother's side as well. Tzricha. Therefore, tzricha. So okay, we'll stop here. We'll just recap what we learned today. We learned that ha'ara is considered like gemar bia by all the arayot. We learned from nida. By nida it says et mikora he'era. And we learned there's a hekesh. All the arayot are connected to each other. So just like by nida, just a partial bia violates nida, considered like gemar bia. So too by all the arayot, just a partial bia is considered a complete bia. We learned by zachar also, ha'ara is like gemar bia because it says mishkevei isha. And we learned by a behema also ha'ara is like gemar bia because it says an additional time in the Torah by achot av and achot em. It says the word ha'ara. I don't remember the exact pasuk. It says the word ha'ara. So we learned from there to behema because that pasuk is all additional. It's all there for a drasha. Like we learned just now that it's there to teach me that it's ben minav, ben minaim, the mother's sister and the father's sister is going to be asura whether it's a sister who he shares only a father with or only a mother with. And since that pasuk is just there to teach me that drasha, we included in other drashot to teach me that if someone is together with a behema, just ha'ara also is going to be asur. So the next amud is also going to be a little bit like drashot and kal v'chomer. Then we get back to regular programming. We're going to explain exactly what ha'ara is and go by different numbers.
How you translate